hell right now, I don't know. So, but yeah. So, all of these together give you what we call your consciousness. You're alert. If you're not alert, you're probably unconscious. You're attentive. All right, cool. Attentive means your association areas are active. Because to be attentive, you're collecting sensory information and associating it. You're tying it together. And you're aware. You may recall other experiences that use the same association cortices, the same somatosensation or special sensory inputs, whatever. And between all of those, you have some level of consciousness. So consciousness in a philosophy class is very different from consciousness in a biological sense. So we're going to go through these various scenarios. Some of them are easy to understand, some of them are complicated, some of them bring in other issues, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about them. So, brain dead. Well, if you are brain dead, you only have spinal reflexes. You might have some lower brain stem function, but in general, from the neck up, if we were to look for electrical activity, we would see none. So you're missing functionality. Someone who is brain dead, however, if you put them on a respirator, hook them up to a glucose drip, they might live forever. You can keep someone brain dead alive for quite a while. This kind of brain dead. How do we get somebody who's brain dead? How do we kill somebody and get them brain dead?
Drowning.
Drowning? Oh, that usually is like dead.
No, there was an actor. He kind of like an accident and he drowned. So that it wasn't drown. He got amoeba going to his brain. It was kind of like yeah, like. And then
I love those amoeba, by the way. Those are
yeah,
so cool.
and then they tried to keep him alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a while,
But the amoeba ate his brain. Have you heard about those? You catch them swimming in Louisiana or something. So don't go swimming. Yeah.
What about, I heard this story about this girl who had her tonsils out and she's declared brain dead, but the family still has her hooked up to ventilators and stuff. And she was like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah. Usually brain death, and yeah, both of those can be a case of brain death. Typically brain death is when the brain in toto has been deprived of oxygen. That is the quickest way to achieve brain death. So occluding both carotid arteries can lead to brain death. Oh, wait a minute. I can choke you. I can literally get you to fall down, and if I hold it long enough, you will be brain dead. Typically carbon monoxide. So, carbon monoxide is a neurotransmitter, by the way. However, small amounts of carbon monoxide, as I may have told you, can get you obnoxiously high. Okay? Followed by something just a little bit higher, which will take you to brain dead. And a little bit higher will take you to absolute dead. So, yeah. Typically depriving the brain of oxygen. Drowning. I wanted you to go to lack of oxygen. The surgical thing. if you've never worked in an operatory, what you don't realize is that every type of gas in an operatory has a different connector. So you cannot misconnect any two types of gas in an operatory. You know, so oxygen will always be oxygen. The mask that goes on the face can only attach to an oxygen tank. So things like that. In the past, however, on occasion, mistakes were made because, you know, they were just color-coded or something. And the person was red-green colorblind, and, you know, they gave you, I don't know, carbon monoxide instead of oxygen, and you became brain dead. During surgeries, people can be killed that way. Because during a longer surgery, or during a lot of surgeries that they're doing cutting, a lot of cutting, they will artificially breathe for you. Okay, if you're hooked up to some form of ventilation, they have no idea what it's going to be like when they wake you up. So you really, it's always good. My philosophy has always been, have a good conversation with your, with your anesthesiologist. You know, promise to buy them dinner after the surgery's over. Because if you're dead, you can't. So, yeah. Brain dead. I don't know what else to say about brain dead, other than it sucks. Now, on occasion, somebody will be brain dead, and a miracle! You know, they come back to life. They weren't brain dead. They had no signals. They could not detect the signals. Now, what you have to remember is nobody is going to go into your brain to make sure you're brain dead. So, yeah. On occasion, there are misdiagnoses that result in miracles. Cause. Yes?
Can trauma, like accident trauma, like head trauma?
In general, trauma can lead to brain death. Trauma can lead to death, and trauma can lead to damaging parts of the brain. But the trauma would have to deprive your entire brain of oxygen.
Like pressure of the blood. Like a lot of blood. Like
You could have trauma and bleed and essentially almost bleed out, but the problem is, as you are bleeding and losing blood, the blood flow to your brain tends to remain constant. Your brain will be one of the last things to go. It is amazing. If you take a look at blood flow to the brain, and do it with extreme exercise, sleep through exercise. And what you realize, the difference between sleep and playing Olympic level basketball or soccer is probably 15 or 20 mils a minute. The blood flow to the brain is surprisingly constant. It is really, really very constant. So the only way that could work, once again, might be bilateral damage to the neck. So yeah.
I'm thinking about what's it called? The bleeding in the brain. That's what I'm thinking.
Cerebral edema, or a big cerebral bleed, or
yeah, something
yeah.
like that.
That's going to affect parts of the brain, not the whole brain. To affect the whole brain, you have to affect the carotid flow. Yeah. So, has anybody heard any more lately about the head transplant they're promising us in Russia? No? Have you followed that? No, some guy was going to have his head transplanted. It was going to be a long surgery. There was something. Yeah, there's something like 54 doctors and I don't know, 60-hour surgery and so. Oh yeah, it was like I think he was already picking out the body he wanted. And everything. But I haven't heard anything about it lately. I was just wondering if any of you have heard an update. What's that?
It was a few months ago, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was a while back. But I don't know if they actually did the surgery. It's like, you'd think if they did the surgery and it was a success, we'd know about it.
Right.
You know? So, I don't know. Coma. Coma is interesting scenario. So with a coma, you have spinal reflexes, you have brainstem reflexes. But your cortex and midbrain appear to be minimally functional. So, you do not lose function in those areas. So a lot of times, once again, we hear people occasionally in comas for years, and they come out of the coma. Why? I don't know. They liked the movie that was running, they wanted to see the end, and they made 804 sequels. There's no way to explain any of that. None of those things have any rational explanation. Other than you can be in a coma for a minimum amount of time or a very long time. A vegetative state. In a vegetative state, you actually have most of your brainstem reflexes. You have no cortical activity. So once again, if they were to do an EEG on you or look for brain waves and things, you'd be flat, but you'd still have an active brainstem. So with that active brainstem, you can, once again, survive for quite a while. With the active lower brainstem, you might actually be able to have spontaneous respiration as well. Yeah?
Is that caused by lack of oxygen too?
You know, that can be caused by a lot of things. Typically, it might be low oxygen, like possibly you would go into a vegetative state maybe after deep water drowning, where you have a minimum amount of oxygen to keep everything alive, but you don't have any cortical activity. The tissue is not dead, it is alive. Therefore, you have blood flow, you can have oxygen, and so I don't have another really good answer as far as lack of oxygen goes. But typically, if you have lack of oxygen for any period of time, you're going to have cell death. People can come out of a vegetative state on occasion and be almost normal. I'm not sure you can be totally normal. So. Minimally conscious or better. I love that. It's kind of like students in an 8 o'clock class, 8 in the morning. Yeah. Variable cortical responses. You have to remember your cortex is responsible for so much in you. You can't move without cortical function. You can't have sensory reception without cortical function. You can't have executive management or decision making or fear, anger, loathing, memory, any of those things without cortical function. So when those are disrupted in one way or another, you have this variable cortical response. Technically, you get hit, you have some form of head trauma, you pass out, you are in a variable cortical response state, minimally conscious. We hear this on occasion, people who've been in a trauma and they're coming into and out of consciousness. Okay? When we talk about somebody coming into and out of consciousness, we don't mean they're falling asleep and waking up. You're talking about levels of cortical activity. You know, their cortex is active, it's not active. So, if you ever had a situation where you had a